an interest in the point of view of a social scientist. And I think my teachers would not have thought that I'm talking to machine learning people after I finished my studies. So we will have a quick, oh, I have some cards prepared. We will have a quick travel through China's social credit system, but I just take this as an example of digitalized tools and their influence. So this is no China bashing talk. I'm sorry about that, I'm not presenting that. And this is not only on social credit system in China. I take it as an example to show what is possible today with machine learning and digitalized data. So when you have any questions, please contact me afterwards. We just have half an hour, so I have to rush you through everything. We will have 6 steps. And the first step will be a little game called Imagine. To give you a clue what social credit is about, then we will have a look at the social credit system and its background. So, to tell people what a social credit system is, I try to tell them, imagine that your life is kind of a game. You can get a lot of presents by performing everyday tasks. And we all love presents. So whatever you do, you can get presents. And that's fun. You have games and mini games and levels. When you do a lot of tasks, you get to the next level. I mean, we all know how games work. And this game is your life. And a lot of people say that's great. It gives you like a motivation to be a better human being. And this is kind of what's happening in China now. But imagine that a game with every breath you take by the police playing in the background. Because this is what is happening. Everything you do that you can get points for it, it is recorded. The data is used. So when you jaywalk, for example, you lose points. And your game life means that you can get points and lose points. And most importantly, and this is often forgotten in the discussion about machine learning and digitalization, is you're just a player. You have to play. But the rules are made by other people, and they are not even explained properly in most of the cases. So, keeping that in mind, what's a social credit system? A social credit system is something the Chinese government is working on for a couple of years now. In 2014, the Chinese government had a planning outlined on the construction of a social credit system in China. And they say all the data is used to create trust and an honest mentality among people and companies, because individuals and companies will each get a score. And they say it's a way of bringing governance into the 21st century. So there's a special thing called mandatory. The system will become mandatory in 2020, which is not now, but soon. And there have been preparation for years. In this outline, the government said it can have governmental and private social credit systems. So there are private companies testing social credit systems as well in different areas. And you have mandatory governmental ones in different areas in China now. So this system is already running. There have been a lot of false reports on the system lately in Western media. And because of that, I'm telling you there's one system I will talk about later called Sesame credit, and this is not the mandatory system. This was messed up in one press release, I think in 2015, and then you can see how journalism works in a lot of parts, or science, because this error was copied and copied and copied till it became kind of the truth, but it's not. So it's not the mandatory system, and but it's a very good system to have a look how a social credit system works. I've told you that everything is going to be recorded and a score will be formed from your doings in your everyday life. And Alibaba has that huge system called Sesame Credit, and because it's a private company, of course they want you to spend a lot of time and money with their platforms. And this system draws data from your payments with Alipay, all the services you use with Alibaba. I will talk about Alibaba soon. And that's a special point. It works together with a lot of governmental and private data banks. So Baihe is the biggest dating app in China. So why is that so special? In finding the special someone, you're usually very open with your data. In applying for a bank loan, you wouldn't answer all the questions asked in a dating app. Or mostly not. You would say, no, you're a pervert, I'm not coming back here, if your teller would ask you that's it. Or at least, I guess you would. So in dating apps, we are horribly open with data. And Grindr, for example, sold the data of their members being HIV positive. That can give you kind of feeling what data can do with your life. And facial recognition is huge in China. So Smile to Pay, I don't know how many of you guys know a comedian called Marc-Uwe Kling. There you have to kiss your smartphone. Here you just have to smile at it. But of course it gives you a nice feeling towards the system. And it works together with courts. So if you screw up something, you might not only get a fine, you might lose points and have bad consequences in life, like not being able to board a plane or luxury class of a train. And they get data from a lot of other data banks. I did not like to bore you with too many details. And really, it has penalties. At the beginning, it hadn't so many penalties, but the penalties are growing. So it's a tool. It's a tool to form your behavior. And the technological details are not openly discussed. And this is my problem in a lot of technological systems. Going back to the player analogy, we don't know how we are being created. We are created like in school. But we do not know the rules exactly. We do not know the algorithms involved or the machine learning. And I think this is not fair. I would be really interested in the details, because the other part gives a lot of power to the government or the company. So next question usually is, how is the 2020 system? What will be created? How can you get points? What penalties? And the Chinese government is really open with a lot of things, but we do not know a lot about the mandatory system. They are testing systems on different levels in different regions and really different systems at the moment. And they get the data back and they form a new system on that data. So we can just guess from existing systems how the system will work. But we will find out. And people who think that, oh, it's too big, the Chinese government is not able to finish that till 2020, the Chinese government really knows what it's doing, from my experience as a Chinese scientist. And they're really good in big projects. And the Chinese government does not think in months or years, they think in decades and more. This is a huge difference to most governments. So, with all that data, it's interesting to have a quick look at the Chinese internet landscape, because China has controlled, I think this is a fact widely known, it's strictly controlled by the government. So there are fascinating technologies we cannot touch today in this talk. I'm really sorry about it. And there's one fact you can keep in mind, because it might come to the West as well: true name registrations. So your chances of using some stuff anonymously is dwindling. It has millions of users, and there's in fact not really well known in Western countries. ICTs are huge in China, and internet is huge in China. You can get internet access, wonderful internet access, in the middle of nowhere. So it's not that the government cannot get digital data from most people. And there's one fascinating thing, like 10 years ago, for example, I think it was 10 years ago, you could more or less only pay in cash. And looking at data, cash is a wonderful thing because you do not leave data, you leave money. And playing with plastic was not really possible. So you had to pay your rent in advance, your student tuition, everything in advance, maybe half a year in advance. And so you needed a lot of cash. You couldn't, and now they leapfrog plastic and credit cards. So they are just jumping to digital payment methods. But, I mean, it's not that the Chinese internet is a dead place where the government tells people to do stuff and so on. This is not how China works. This is not how the Chinese internet works. It's not how humans work. There are regulations, but humans are really good in finding their ways around them. So Chinese users found multiple ways to trespass censorship when it appears. And because it's not dominated by US technology companies, they have their own internet huge players, and they are the three biggest are really big in machine learning and this whole field of artificial intelligence. They're called BAT, Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent. So this is the only one with color. I'm not a very colorful presentation person. So looking at this, you can always think, okay, how much data about users can they get? We'll start with Baidu. Baidu is the biggest search engine, so a lot of data. And they present Baidu Baike, which is the online encyclopedia. They have Wikipedia, it's not so popular. So when you want to know something, you go to Baidu. And they have a payment app, of course. The second player, Tencent, is well known by gamers, but they do other stuff in China as well. And I'm only looking at a couple of things these platforms are doing. These platforms are just huge. And they had the most important messenger in China. QQ, yes, ICQ was in the same time, and they had some lawsuits because it looked too much like ICQ. So now they have tags with Scarf. And it was really hard to stay in contact with people in China, younger people, if you didn't use QQ. Now they have another messenger designed for smarts, so smartphones. It's WeChat, and this is popular around the world. And WeChat has, of course, a payment app, because money is interesting. And not so many people know they are part of a very unpopular app. It's called Snapchat. So your data doesn't stay in the hand of one company. Alibaba gets a huge data from selling stuff. And they even founded their own holiday, a Singles Day in China. If you think that Black Friday is huge, China is always a bit bigger. So you have Alipay, a payment app, of course, and C2C retail. And very interesting for communication, Sina Weibo, it's a microblogging platform, is one of the most important and most influential microblogging platforms, and it holds a third. Wrong. And the financial group is really important because it does not only have Alipay, it also has Sesame credit. So now we know there's a huge amount of data in these companies. And they do it like in the West. They use the data. That's not a huge problem. And they work together with the government and have their own social credit systems. So changing a system or just inventing a new system is huge because you need a lot of work, energy, money. So there's always a reason for a system. We humans are lazy. We need a reason for doing stuff. So we dive into history, just a couple of steps, not the whole couple of thousand years in China. So the People's Republic, as you can hear in the name, is called a socialist country. And it's one of the few socialist countries that survived 1890. And since then has developed economically, and that produced a lot of social problems because, as you know, usually a lot of people lose when some people gain. And they have mass incidents. I will run through this to go to gamification later, which means around 250, now more, per day. So China is no quiet country. And every organized society has measures of social control. It's not that the Chinese government is about control. Every government is about control. This is how a government is organized. And a couple of traditional social control measures have survived and live in the socialist China today. And as digital tools became more and more important, social control via digital tools became more and more important in China. So, we will skip that one because we are late, I'm sorry. So, coming to that wonderful word, Gamifidingsbums, is the new German word for gamification. Yes, there was no good German word, so I tried to create one. Gamification is a very young technique. And people developed it for computer games. For what? That we spend a lot of time with the game and that we love the game. So that's really easy, right? And then some clever people said, well, if that works so good with games, why don't we use it for other stuff as well? Which is okay, because it's a tool. And a tool like a computer can be used for everything. For good, for bad, for something in the middle, for something boring. But with gamification, there's one problem. One problem is people don't know that they are players in a gameful world and in a gamified system. And I think that's never fair. I'm just a person who likes to be informed when people try to manipulate me. So another point why it's dangerous is that when we play, humans play, we are out of danger. At least we think we are out of danger. Because if there is danger, if there's like your apartment is on fire, you're not like, oh, that's a cool time to play a game. No, usually you run. And when you feel safe, you play again. So when we play, we are kind of helpless because we have such a good feeling about the moment. And I mean, gamification is used in the military as well. And I tend to see that as not good. And one really huge thing with datafication, with digitalization is we cannot feel it. It's like nuclear radiation for us. We cannot feel it, we cannot smell it, we cannot taste it. So for us, it's invisible, it's not there. It's really hard for a human to understand that something we cannot grab is existing. I mean, on the one hand, we are great in inventing gods and masters we cannot see. We can see something in a stone or Jesus in a piece of toasted bread. But on the other hand, we need our senses to understand the world. And because we do not see data, we cannot feel data. We cannot feel when our data is misused. And We give away data because we don't see it. And I think if someone would ring your bell at your flat and ask you to be let in, photograph and video all your apartment and your data, and copy all the files on your computer, you would say, no, hell, I won't let you in. But we are giving away our data to so-called social media every minute of our life. And I think that's really important to know that data is power today, and we are giving away power. We will skip that one too, because we are late. And this is not what I wanted to do. I'm sorry, you just see the pictures. It's how the Chinese ideology goes. So, and communication with the public changed not only in China. In China, you had a lot of changes with the public. You had old campaigns and programs that had revolutionary names. And now you have new campaigns, and they have new names that are either Confucianist influenced or Chinese Dream. They get their influence somewhere else. But the central thing is governments are really interested in feedbacks, and companies as well. And this is no Chinese thing. This is not some little freakish thing they do in China. No, every government needs feedback. And digitalized things provide excellent feedback. We all carrying sensors that we buy and pay for and care for. I mean, we all charge a phone. It's not charged by the government or the company. I mean, Apple is not knocking at night at your door and say, I'm sorry, I have to charge all your devices. No, we care for it. So we participate in a kind of surveillance every day, every minute, because no one sucks the data from us, we are providing it. And so a lot of governments have seen that ICTs provide an excellent way of feedback. So we provide, or Chinese people provide, feedback via ICTs. But it's a whole new level in a digitized world. We have amounts of data that couldn't be thought of before. So we do not have a lot of time for all these topics. But I would like you to keep in mind a couple of points. And the first is there's an international tendency trying to solve social problems with technology. And most of the technology was not even written for that purpose. And I mean, it's technology, and the other side is human. And they just learn to live together. But digitized tools and the internet provide excellent way to influence people and for social control. And a social credit system is a mix of big data, algorithms, and gamification. And this, I think, provides possibilities that can be really dangerous. Why? I will tell you in the next slide. And gamification makes us very vulnerable for manipulation. Bless you. And there's an interesting point because this system is not static. It can be enriched with a lot of other technologies. For example, with a digital currency created by a government. And facial recognition is used in all these systems. For example, jaywalking, you get on a screen. You lose points. And there's something because you're developers. You develop the future. And I mean, I can quote Spider-Man. I really like that. With great power comes great responsibility. You have great responsibility because you try to shape the future. And with nuclear power and maybe plastic, humankind made a huge mistake. And that means we put something out in the world we cannot take back. So we are ruining the future of generations after us. And I think this is not fair. And I think we can learn from mistakes. Humans are really good in this. So we made the mistake once with nuclear energy we cannot take back. and twice with plastic and all these materials we invented that are poisoning the environment we live off, because we live off food. So digitalization can be a huge mistake. When we create systems we cannot build back. When we create systems that can create new systems we cannot control anymore. I don't think that we as humans are so smart that we can predict the future. And every tool you make, even if you made it out of the best-hearted person you are, might be able to be used for something horribly in the future. And data has a huge problem because data stays, and because rhymes are always easy to remember, I made a little rhyme extra for you. It's companies and governments can decay, data will stay. And this is a problem people don't really talk about at the moment, but I think we should. Because the data that is collected today and in the past can be used in the future, and we do not know what people will be in power in the future, either governments or companies, because companies get a lot of power via data, because data is power. So we do not know today who will be in charge in the future, and we do not know what they will draw from our data and our behavior. And this is really important to think about. We do not know what kind of credits we will have in the future according to our behavior today. And I think this is a huge danger for society. And with that beautiful outlook, I would like to finish. Take care of your data and think about how you want to live your life, because we might agree on that we have at least one life. And every time you use a little phone called Smart, it's your lifetime you're using. And think about how you want to live and how you want to die in a society. And then you live your life and take some responsibility for society and the planet we live on. That was all.
Thank you. Thank you very much for these really interesting insights. I'm sure many of you have lots of questions. We don't have time to discuss many questions, but I have the privilege to ask one question, being on stage.
Misuse of power.
Misuse of power, yes. No, I just wanted to know, because if you imagine living in the world of social scoring and of gamification, what happens if you just, as an individual, decide to stay outside this gamification world? Because then you get 0 credits, whatever happens, but this also is a statement, isn't it?
Yes, it can be seen as a statement. And it can, I mean, if the systems would tell you what they do with the data, I think it would be fair, kind of fair, when you get a pop-up like, okay, using this website means you're trading your data for, I don't know what, using a flashlight on your phone. It takes all your contacts. Then people could decide because they know something about it. But now I think, well, we don't know a lot of things about the hardware or software we are using, and I think this is dangerous because it gives the companies a lot of power.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think there's plenty of opportunities. Katika is still around here at the conference, yeah? To talk to her. And in general, I'd like to also mention that after the last session at 6:15 in the evening, there's also a reception with a little drinks and beers, etc. So it's a good place to mingle around, to network, to talk to the speakers, to talk to each others, and just to reflect what happened today. Having said that, I'd like to thank you very much for your attention, and thanks again for Katika.
Thank you for spending the time.